Good evening, and welcome to the next reading at Homemade Audiobooks. Let's head off to a seaside audio escape nestled in the coastal paradise of Amity. Get ready for curmudgeonly cops, amoral mayors, egg salad sandwiches, rickety boats, boardwalks, and sun-tanned yuppies. Oh, and there's also a slick full of salt, sex, sea dogs, and sharks. It's time for Peter Benchley's Jaws. If you want to help out this coastal town during the bleak winter months, then thrust some coin my way over on Patreon. Big thanks to wintertime Amity resident Chris L., who has been with me from the very beginning. Enjoy listening.
Part 2. Chapter 6. On her way home Friday noon, after a morning of volunteer work at the Southampton hospital, Ellen stopped at the post office to buy a roll of stamps and get the mail. There was no home mail delivery in Amity. In theory, only special delivery mail was brought to the door, any door within a mile radius of the post office. In fact, even special delivery mail, except that clearly labelled as sent by the federal government, was kept at the post office until someone called for it. The post office was a small, square building on Teal Street, just off Main. It had 500 mailboxes, 340 of which were rented to Amity's permanent residents. The other 160 were allotted to summer people, according to the whims of the postmistress, Minnie Eldridge. Those people she liked were permitted to rent boxes for the summer. Those she didn't like had to wait in line at the counter. Since she refused to rent a box to any summer person on a year-round basis, summer people never knew from one year to the next whether or not they would have a mailbox when they arrived in June. It was generally assumed that Minnie Eldridge was in her early 70s, and that she had somehow convinced the authorities in Washington that she was well under compulsory retirement age. She was small and frail-looking, but deceptively strong, able to hustle packages and cartons nearly as quickly as the two young men who worked in the post office with her. She never spoke about her past or her private life. The only common knowledge about her was that she had been born in Nantucket Island and had left sometime soon after World War I. She had been in Amity for as long as anyone living could remember, and she considered herself not only a native, but also the resident expert on the history of the town. She needed no prodding at all to embark on a discourse about Amity's eponym, a 17th century woman named Amity Hopewell who had been convicted of witchcraft, and she took pleasure in reciting the list of major events in the town's past. The landing of some British troops during the Revolution in an ill-fated attempt to outflank a colonial force. The Britons lost their way and wandered aimlessly back and forth across Long Island. The fire in 1823 that destroyed every building except the town's only church. The wreck of a rum-running ship in 1921. The ship was eventually refloated, but by then all the cargo offloaded to make the ship lighter had vanished. The hurricane of 1938, and the widely reported, though never fully ascertained, landing of 3 German spies on the Scotch Road beach in 1942. Ellen and Minnie made each other nervous. Ellen sensed that Minnie didn't like her, and she was right. Minnie felt uneasy with Ellen because she couldn't catalogue her. Ellen was neither summer folk nor winter folk. She hadn't earned her year-round mailbox. She had married it. Minnie was alone in the post office, sorting mail when Ellen arrived. "Morning, Minnie," Ellen said. Minnie looked up at the clock over the counter and said,
"Afternoon."
"Could I have a roll of 8s, please?" Ellen put a $5 bill and 3 ones on the counter. Minnie pushed a few more letters into boxes, set down her bundle, and walked to the counter. She gave Ellen a roll of stamps and dropped the bills into a drawer.
"Well, what's Martin think he's gonna do about that shark?"
she said. "I don't know. I guess they'll try to catch it."
"Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook?"
"I beg your pardon?"
Book of Job,
said Minnie.
no mortal man's gonna catch that fish.
Why do you say that?
We're not meant to catch it. That's why we're being readied.
For what?
We'll know when the time comes.
I see. Ellen put the stamps in her purse. Well, maybe you're right. Thanks, Minnie. She turned and walked towards the door.
There'll be no mistaking it.
Minnie said to Ellen's back. Ellen walked to Main Street and turned right, past a boutique and an antique shop. She stopped at Amity Hardware and went inside. There was no immediate response to the tinkle of the bell that the door struck as she opened it. She waited for a few seconds, then called, Albert. She walked to the back of the store, to an open door that led to the basement. She heard two men talking below.
I'll be right up,
called the voice of Albert Morris.
Here's a whole box of them.
Morris said to the other man.
Look through and see if you find what you want.
Morris came to the bottom of the stairs and started up, slowly and deliberately, one step at a time, holding on to the banister. He was in his early 60s and he had had a heart attack 2 years earlier.
Cleats,
he said when he reached the top of the stairs. What? Said Ellen.
Cleats. A fellow wants cleats for a boat. Size he's looking for, he must be the captain of a battleship. Anyway, what can I do for you?
The rubber nozzle in my kitchen sink is all cracked. You know, the kind with the switch for spraying? I want to get a new one.
No problem. We're up this way.
Morris led Ellen to a cabinet in the middle of the store.
This what you had in mind?
He held up a rubber nozzle. Perfect.
80 cents. Charge or cash?
I'll pay for it. I don't want to have to write up a slip just for 80 cents.
Written them a lot smaller than that,
said Morris.
I could tell you stories that'd set your ears to ringing.
They walked across the narrow store to the cash register, and as he rang up the sale on the register, Morris said,
Lots of people upset about this shark thing.
I know. You can't blame them.
I think the beaches ought to be opened up again.
Well,
You ask me, I think they're full of, pardon the expression, bull. I think Martin's doing right.
I'm glad to know that, Albert.
Maybe this new fella can help us out.
Who's that?
This fish expert from up Massachusetts.
Oh, yes. I heard he was in town.
He's right here.
Ellen looked around and saw no one. What do you mean?
Don Seller. He's the one who wants the cleats.
Just then, Ellen heard footsteps on the stairs. She turned and saw Hooper coming through the door, and she suddenly felt a surge of girlish nervousness, as if she was seeing a beau she hadn't seen in years. The man was a stranger, yet there was something familiar about him. I found them, said Hooper, holding up 2 large stainless steel cleats. He walked over to the counter, smiled politely at Ellen, and said to Morris, These'll do fine. He put the cleats on the counter and handed Morris a $20 bill. Ellen looked at Hooper, trying to define her reminiscence. She hoped Albert Morris would introduce them, but he seemed to have no intention of doing so. Excuse me, she said to Hooper, but I have to ask you something. Hooper looked at her and smiled again, a pleasant, friendly smile that softened the sharpness of his features and made his light blue eyes shine. Sure, he said. Ask away. You aren't by any chance related to David Hooper, are you? He's my older brother. Do you know David? Yes, said Ellen. Or rather, I used to. I went out with him a long time ago. I'm Ellen Brody. I used to be Ellen Shepard. Back then, I mean. Oh, sure. I remember you. You don't. I do. No kidding. I'll prove it to you. Let me see. You wore your hair shorter then. Sort of a page boy? You always wore a charm bracelet. I remember that because it had a big charm that looked like the Eiffel Tower. And you always used to sing that song. Oh, God. What was it? Shaboom or something like that, right? Ellen laughed. Oh, my heavens, you have quite a memory. I'd forgotten that song.
Hey, screw the things that impress kids. You went out with David for what, 2 years?
2 summers, Ellen said. They were fun. I hadn't thought about them much in the past few years.
Do you remember me?
Vaguely. I'm not sure. I remember David had a younger brother. He must have been about 9 or 10 then.
About that, David's 10 years older than I am. Another thing I remember, everybody called me Matt. I thought it sounded grown up, but you called me Matthew. You said it sounded more dignified. I was probably in love with you.
Oh? Ellen reddened, and Albert Morris laughed.
At one time or another, said Hooper, I fell in love with all the girls David went out with.
Oh. Morris handed Hooper his change, and Hooper said to Ellen,
I'm going down to the dock. Can I drop you anywhere?
Thank you. I have a car. She thanked Morris, and with Hooper behind her, walked out of the store. So now you're a scientist, she said when they were outside.
Kind of by accident. I started out as an English major, but then I took a course in marine biology to satisfy my science requirement, and bingo! I was hooked.
On what? The ocean?
No, I mean, yes and no. I was always crazy about the ocean. When I was 12 or 13, my idea of a big time was to take a sleeping bag down to the beach and spend the night lying in the sand listening to the waves, wondering where they had come from and what fantastic things they had passed on the way. What I got hooked on in college was fish, or to be really specific, sharks.
Ellen laughed. Oh, what an awful thing to fall in love with. It's like having a passion for rats.
That's what most people think, said Hooper. But they're wrong. Sharks have everything a scientist dreams of. They're beautiful. God, how beautiful they are. They're like an impossibly perfect piece of machinery. They're as graceful as any bird. They're as mysterious as any animal on Earth. No one knows for sure how long they live or what impulses, except for hunger, they respond to. There are more than 250 species of shark, and every one is different from every other one. Scientists spend their lives trying to find answers about sharks, and as soon as they come up with a nice pat generalization, something shoots it down. People have been trying to figure out an effective shark repellent for over 2,000 years. They've never found one that really works.
He stopped, looked at Ellen and smiled.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to lecture. As you can see, I'm an addict.
And as you can see, said Ellen, I don't know what I'm talking about. I imagine you went to Yale?
Of course. Where else? For 4 generations, the only male in our family who didn't go to Yale was an uncle of mine who got thrown out of Andover and ended up in Miami, Ohio. After Yale, I went to graduate school at the University of Florida, and after that, I spent a couple of years chasing sharks around the world.
That must have been very interesting.
No, for me, it was paradise. It was like giving an alcoholic the keys to a distillery. I tagged sharks in the Red Sea and dived with them off Australia. The more I learned about them, the more I knew I didn't know.
You dived with them? Hooper nodded.
Oh, in a cage mostly, but sometimes not. I know what you must think. A lot of people think I've got a death wish, my mother in particular. But if you know what you're doing, you can reduce the danger to almost nil.
You must be the world's greatest living shark expert.
Hardly,
Hooper said with a laugh.
But I'm trying. The one trip I missed out on, the one I would have given anything to go on, was Peter Gimbel's trip. It was made into a movie. I dream about that trip. They were in the water with 2 great whites, the same kind of shark that's here now.
I'm just as glad you didn't go on that trip, said Ellen. You probably would have tried to see what the view was like from inside one of the sharks. But tell me about David. How is he?
He's okay, all things considered. He's a broker in San Francisco.
What do you mean, all things considered?
Well, he's on his second wife. His first wife was, well, maybe you know this, Patty Fremont.
Sure. I used to play tennis with her. She sort of inherited David from me. That's a nice way of putting it.
That lasted 3 years until she latched onto someone with a family business and a house in Antibes. So David went and found himself a girl whose father is the majority stockholder in an oil company. She's nice enough, but she's got the IQ of an artichoke. If David had any sense, he would have known when he had it good, and he would have held on to you.
Ellen blushed and said softly, "Oh, you're nice to say it."
I'm serious. That's what I'd have done if I'd have been him.
What did you do? What lucky girl finally got you?
None so far. I guess there are girls around who just don't know how lucky they could be.
Hooper laughed.
Tell me about yourself. No, don't. Let me guess. 3 children, right?
Right. I didn't realize it showed that much.
No. I don't mean that. It doesn't show at all. Not at all. Your husband is, let's see, a lawyer. You have an apartment in town and a house on the beach in Amity. You couldn't be happier. And that's exactly what I'd wish for you.
Ellen shook her head, smiling. No, not quite. I don't mean the happiness part, the rest. My husband is the police chief in Amity. Hooper let the surprise show in his eyes for only an instant. Then he smacked himself on the forehead and said,
Oh, what a dummy I am! Of course, Brody! I never made the connection. That's great! I met your husband last night. He seems like quite a guy.
Ellen thought she detected a flicker of irony in Hooper's voice, but then she told herself, Don't be stupid, you're making things up. How long will you be here? She said.
I don't know. It depends on what happens with the fish. As soon as he leaves, I'll leave.
Do you live in Woods Hole?
No, but not far away. In Hannisport. I have a little house on the water. I have a thing about being near the water. If I get more than 10 miles inland, I begin to feel claustrophobic.
You live all alone?
All alone. It's just me and about $100 million worth of stereo equipment and 1 million books. Hey, do you still dance?
Dance?
Yeah, I just remembered. One of the things David used to say was that you were the best dancer he ever went out with. You won a contest, didn't you?
The past, like a bird long locked in a cage and suddenly released, was flying at her, swirling around her head, showering her with longing. A samba competition, she said. At the beach club. I'd forgotten. No, I don't dance anymore. Martin doesn't dance, and even if he did, I don't think anyone plays that kind of music anymore.
That's too bad. David said you were terrific.
That was a wonderful night, Ellen said, letting her mind float back, picking out the tiny memories. It was a Lester Lannon band. The beach club was covered with crepe paper and balloons. David wore his favorite jacket, red silk.
I have it now, said Hooper. I inherited that from him.
They played all those wonderful songs. Mountain Greenery was one. He could two-step so well. I could barely keep up with him. The only thing we didn't do was waltz. He said waltzes made him dizzy. Everybody was so tanned. I don't think there was any rain all summer long. Now remember, I chose a yellow dress for that night because it went with my tan. There were 2 contests, a Charleston that Susie Kendall and Chip Fogarty won, and the samba contest. They played Brazil in the finals, and we danced as if our lives depended on it, bending sideways and backward like crazy people. I thought I was going to collapse when it was over. You know what we won for fast prize? A canned chicken. I kept it in my room until it got so old it began to swell, and Daddy made me throw it away. Ellen smiled. Oh, those were fun times. I try not to think about them too much.
Why?
The past always seems better when you look back on it than it did at the time. And the present never looks as good as it will in the future. It's depressing if you spend too much time reliving old joys. You think you'll never have anything as good again.
It's easy for me to keep my mind off the past.
Really? Why?
It just wasn't too great, that's all. David was the firstborn. I was, well, pretty much an afterthought. I think my purpose in life was to keep my parents' marriage together, and I failed. That's pretty crummy when you fail at the first thing you're supposed to accomplish. David was 20 when the parents got divorced. I wasn't even 11. And the divorce wasn't exactly amiable. A few years before, it wasn't too amiable either. It's the old story. Nothing special, but it wasn't a lot of fun. I probably make too much of it. Anyway, I look forward to a lot of things. I don't look back a lot.
I suppose that's healthier.
I don't know. Maybe if I had a terrific past, I'd spend all my time living in it. But enough of that. I should get down to the dock. You sure I can't drop you anywhere?
Positive, thank you. My car's just across the street.
Okay. Well,
Hooper held out his hand.
It's been really great to see you again, and I hope I'll see you before I go.
I'd like that, said Ellen, shaking his hand.
I don't suppose I could get you out in a tennis court late some afternoon.
Ellen laughed. Oh my, I haven't held a tennis racket in my hand since I can't remember when, but thanks for asking.
Okay, well, see ya.
Hooper turned and trotted the few yards down the block to his car, a green Ford Pinto. Ellen stood and watched as Hooper started the car, maneuvered out of the parking space, and pulled out into the street. As he drove past her, she raised her hand to her shoulder and waved, tentatively, shyly. Hooper stuck his left hand out of the car window and waved. Then he turned the corner and was gone. A terrible, painful sadness clutched at Ellen. More than ever before, she felt that her life, the best part of it at least, the part that was fresh and fun, was behind her. Recognizing the sensation made her feel guilty, for she read it as proof that she was an unsatisfactory mother, an unsatisfied wife. She hated her life and hated herself for hating it. She thought of a line from a song Billy played on the stereo. I'd trade all my tomorrows for a single yesterday. Would she make a deal like that, she wondered? But what good was there in wondering? Yesterdays were gone, spinning ever farther away down a shaft that had no bottom. None of the richness, none of the delight could ever be retrieved. A vision of Hooper's smiling face flashed across her mind. Forget it, she told herself. That's stupid. Worse, it's self-defeating. She walked across the street and climbed into her car. As she pulled out into the traffic, she saw Larry Vaughan standing in her car. God, she thought, he looks as sad as I feel.